Hello, Tommy and Cruise fans. It's me, Candace, here for another author event that I am particularly excited about because we have a queer sci-fi fantasy YA panel, and it puts lots of things that I like together. And I'm such a big fan of all of the authors that are going to be on this panel today. And so I'm particularly excited to have all of them here at the same time. And we are celebrating a book called Briar Girls by Rebecca Kim Wells. And I can pull it up real quick. Briar Girls. It is a Sleeping Beauty retelling, and I will let Rebecca tell you more about it. But it is so good, and I think that if y'all liked Rebecca's other books, which are Shatter the Sky was the first one in that series, and Storm the Earth was the second one, and I know I've sold that to a lot of y'all because I'm always like, this is lesbians and dragons, and you just buy it. So hopefully you like this new one as well with Briar Girls. And so I'm really excited to have Rebecca here along with all these other amazing authors to celebrate. It is coming out on November 16th, I believe. It's gotten pushed back, so hopefully that's the correct date. And I'm really excited about it. And so Rebecca, her debut novel was Shadow the Sky. It was a New England Book Award finalist, an ALA Rainbow Book List selection, an Indies Introduce selection, and a Kids Indie Next Pick. She is also the author of Storm the Earth and Briar Girls. She holds a BA in Political Science from UC Berkeley and an MFA in Writing for Children and Young Adults from Simmons College, and she is really, really fun, and I'm so glad to have her. And she will be in conversation with Kaylin Barron, A.R. Capetta, Kay Ankrum, and Anna Marie McLemore, and I will let them introduce themselves. I know that most of you know who these folks are. So welcome, and thank y'all so much for being here and doing this event with us today. Hello.
Hello! Thank you so much for that lovely introduction, and hello to everyone else who is here. I think Candace already said everything there is to say about me, so I don't need to say anything except for hello, fellow panelists. Who are you? Tell us about yourselves and your work, and why do readers need to pick up your latest books? I can call on people, or people can volunteer. I'm going to call on Kayla.
Okay. Is it because I made a face? I think it's because I made a face.
Yes, it is because you made a face.
Well, hello, everybody. My name is Kayla Ankrum. I go by Kay Ankrum. I'm the author of The Wicker King, The Weight of the Stars, and my newest book is called Darling. It's a Peter Pan retelling that is an incredibly stressful thriller. I'm done.
Okay, I'm just going to say Kaylin goes next.
Hi, I'm Kaylin Bayron. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay. I'm Kaylin Bayron. I'm the author of Cinderella is Dead and This Poison Heart. I write YA in middle grade, and everybody's queer, everybody's black, everybody's in danger. So that's pretty on brand for me. That's about it.
I love short, to the point, and everyone needs to pick up these books. A.R. Capetta.
Hi, I'm A.R. Capetta. You can call me August. I write books that are weird and strange and magical and everything sort of in that in-between space. And my latest book is The Heartbreak Bakery, which is about magical baking and a bakery called the Proud Muffin. So that's probably what you need to know.
I just finished reading it recently, and it made me so hungry and envious of your names of all of your institutions.
Oh, thank you. And I am still hungry, so, I feel like by the time I'm done talking about this book at any point, I need to find a bakery. That's been fun.
Hi, I'm Anna Marie McLemore. My pronouns are they, them, and I am the author of several very queer, very trans, very Latine fairy tales. Most recently, The Mirror Season, which is about pansexuality and Enchanted Palm Dulce. August, I'm so glad we've ended up on a panel together because we've needed to talk about queerness and bake stuff. Um, my upcoming book is called Lake Lore, which is about neurodivergence, being trans and non-binary, a secret world under a lake, and glitter jars.
I cannot wait for the glitter jars. I mean, everything else about your books in general, but especially the glitter jars. So I've gathered you all here today. I guess I should say something about Briar Girls, which technically comes out next week, hopefully. It is a Sleeping Beauty reimagining, kind of a remix that has elements of several fairy tales in it, about a girl named Lena who was cursed by a witch before she was born so that she kills everyone she touches, and about what happens when she discovers that there may be a way to break the curse. And it's got sinister forests and lots of liars and betrayal, and just like a lot of bad things happen. But it's happy in the end. It's got a happy ending. So I guess maybe it like bridges the gap between like fluffy and very dangerous. Um, but our books are so different, but we've all written retellings of familiar stories. So I'd love to hear what drew you to write a retelling, and also, is there a story that you haven't retold that you would love to?
I'll jump in. I'm drawn to retellings because I feel like it's a space where I didn't really get to see myself too often in what I was reading when I was growing up. I didn't really see any retellings that featured queer Black girls, and so I wanted to see that, and so I wrote a book that kind of reimagined us in that space, and I just really love a good like hidden history. I love a retelling that makes you rethink the original. I'm a huge Broadway fan, and Wicked is one of my favorite musicals. And after you see Wicked, you can just never look at The Wizard of Oz ever the same again. And that's kind of what I wanted to do with retellings, and that's why I'm drawn to them. I just love a hidden history and a good backstory.
I love that. That's one of my favorite things about Cinderella is Dead is the moment where the main character starts to realize, wow, like what really happened is not what we've been told all along. And I also love Broadway and Wicked.
I'll jump in. So I wrote Darling because I'm very, very interested in books that present readers with kind of like different perspectives. Peter Pan is an interesting book because it's meant to be read one way by children and another way by adults. It's kind of more like a horror thriller for adults and like an adventure fantasy for children. There's another book that's similar to that people might be more familiar with since the original did come out in 1904. But Coraline is also another book that adults tend to read as like horror suspense and children tend to read as like adventure fantasy. And what I wanted to do was create a chapter by chapter adaptation of the original book, written in a way that preserves as much of the original as possible to highlight the horror aspects of the book for their own merit, as opposed to kind of like adding something that changes or I don't know, grim darks Peter Pan in the way that I probably could have. And it's very much kind of like an academic project for me, but I really wanted to make it kind of like fun and urban and Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist.
That is so fascinating. Like that's very different from the way that I approach like adaptations and reimaginings. And now I feel like, oh, we need to do a buddy read between the original and Peter Darling. Or sorry, is it Peter Darling or is it Darling? I forgot.
It's just Darling.
Darling. Okay, thank you.
In terms of doing retellings, I was very very, very happy to work on the Once and Future series, but that was originally my spouse Corey's idea. So I feel like I'll sort of leave that there because that original sort of instinct to retell that story came from him. So and getting to go in and find a new way into that and to queer that and to add different layers to that was so much fun. But the books that I think about probably in terms of retellings are the Brilliant Death series that I got to do, which are very much based in and around Italian folk tales. So I might not specifically retell the Italian folk tales, but I've taken pieces of them and woven them through in ways that I felt like I kept finding pieces of magic that resonated with this idea of transformation and queerness in a way that was so unique and so unlike anything I'd seen in maybe in Italian family, and just wanting to like get deeper and deeper into that in a way that also connected to my own queer identity was really, really delightful. And I don't feel like I'm done with those stories yet. I feel like I'd still love to go back in and find some maybe even more just straight up retellings of some of the more foundational Italian folk tales. I think would be a really joyful project for me. So yeah.
I read The Brilliant Death and I thought it was just mind-blowing. I was astounded by it. And I actually haven't read the second one yet. I've been saving it because I know it's going to be perfect and I want to be like in a place where I'm like ready for that. But I love first that you didn't take credit for Corey's idea and also that you had a fantastic answer prepared anyway. Anna Marie.
So first off, sorry, you're going to see me moving around because of the weird sun that comes in at this angle. And currently I'm going to need to be right up against the trans flag, which I guess is appropriate. So when I think about retellings, a lot of what I think about is who gets villainized. I was thinking about that with this book, Dark and Deepest Red, which is a reimagining of the Red Shoes through the lens of the 1518 Strasbourg dancing play. So it's thinking a lot about like who's gotten blamed for things throughout history, alongside these stories like the Red Shoes that are sort of moralizing about women's bodies, like what we should and should not be, what we should and should not want. And that especially resonated with me growing up as a dancer, growing up as a dancer of color. So I think about like what we're told about who is to be villainized, and I thought about that again with I feel very like fairy meets 1950s instructional video with this book here, but this is better than me knocking all my books down, which is what I was doing before, so this is an improvement. So when I was thinking about the Mirror Season, which brings in elements of the Snow Queen, that was a story that I loved growing up, but it was also a story that made me really mad because the two characters that I wanted to know more about, I wanted to know more about the Snow Queen, this character we just take as a villain, but why did she end up being so at home in ice? Like why is the cold the place where she feels that she must be? And also I wanted to ask questions about like the only brown character in that story who gets no name other than the little robber girl, which kind of tells you everything. So taking apart what we're told in fairy tales, taking apart who's cast as villains, that's something that is really at the heart of a lot of what I do with fairy tale retellings. And with retellings in general, I like asking some of the what ifs of letting in identities that are often left out of the stories we're most exposed to. I'm thinking about this a lot as I'm working on Self-Made Boys, which is my Great Gatsby reimagining, which comes out next fall. I get to do the stuff that I sort of saw, like the stuff that I wondered about. Like, was it possible that Gatsby was trans? Like, was I seeing what I thought I was seeing, which was like Nick is really, really into Gatsby. So those sort of like the magic of the what ifs is something that I think about a lot with reimaginings too.
I committed the terrible error of talking before I was off mute. I could just honestly just sit here and listen to everyone talk about like why they approach their work in the way they do, because you're all so smart. And I love that you all have such interesting and different answers. What is there a story that you haven't retold that you would love to?
I and it's so hard to like just say these ideas because we're all in the same like little tiny genre together. So we're friends, we're competitors. But I really love Jekyll and Hyde. I love the idea of the structure of that story. I like the history of the story. I like the academic relationship that people have with that story. And I think I could come up with something that's really, really cool that kind of like plays on a lot of the themes that are within the book, but doesn't really kind of bend to what it has. I very much enjoy working inside of the box and creating something inside of a box that's way more ornate than people would assume you'd be able to make inside of a box as opposed to going outside of the box. So I think that would be a really cool medium to look into for that.
I feel like after hearing your approach for Darling, I am even more interested in what you would do with that. I feel like mine is Beauty and the Beast. Like it's very classic, and honestly, I feel like it's been done so well that I don't know what I would do with it, but it's just so near to my heart that I'm like, I would love to do that someday.
I'd love to do a Pied Piper retelling.
Mm.
That story just kind of creeps me out in general. So yeah, I'm drawn to stories that have a dark side. Maybe the juniper tree too. That story is insanely scary and um, lots of different layers there. So definitely something like that.
Be really cool.
I'm a big Shakespeare nerd, but also there's a lot of things to be mad about when you study Shakespeare. So I feel drawn towards the problem plays because I feel like as someone who tends to write in between genre spaces, I'm drawn to the stories that don't quite fit into a neat space of, if you think about, a comedy or a history, and then there are like 5 plays that are over here to the side that don't quite fit anywhere neatly. So I think about things like A Winter's Tale. But I did get to work on that YA anthology, which a couple other people here are also in, which was really, really fun. This Way Madness Lies, which Dahlia Adler edited. So I feel like I got to like play in the Shakespeare box a little bit already, which was very fun.
I feel like everybody who is interested in queer SFF YA, A, needs to know about Dahlia Adler, but B, needs to pick up all of her anthologies because she's so good at them. So there's a Edgar Allan Poe one, and then a Shakespeare one, and then there's a fairy tale one that's coming out. It's not out yet.
I need to hide from this question because publishing secrets, but stay tuned.
I mean, you could give us like a misdirection answer, but that's okay. Now I just get to be even more excited. So everybody usually loves their main characters, I guess. Otherwise, you wouldn't spend so much time writing them. But I feel like side characters deserve more love than they get. And I would like to know who among all of your side characters is your favorite? Or you can say multiple people. That's fine too.
I can start with this one. So when I thought about this, the character that I landed on was in Mirror Season. So I love the trope of friends to lovers, but I also love lovers to friends, and that's what Jess ended up being in this book. I don't know if anyone else experienced this, where sometimes if you're in this sort of closed community where there aren't very many queer people who are out, sometimes it's like, you're queer, I'm queer, we must be meant to date. And that's what happens with Jess and Ciela in this story. And then, prior to the story, and then they figure out, like, wait, this is we are different kinds of soulmates. We are meant to be best friends. And during the course of the book, Ciela kind of like partly through the enchanted palm dulce is sort of helping Jess in her romance with this other girl. So I really enjoyed writing like lovers to friends. It was something that was really, really special to me to write.
I love that.
So my favorite two side characters in Darling are Curly and Nibs. They are two of the Lost Boys, and they are best friends. And I really enjoy writing found families. It's one of my favorite things to do in the queer worlds that I create for my books. And they have a really intense kind of brother relationship. I had Nibs be hard hearing, and him and Curly have this like way that they communicate with each other that's very almost like they're twins in a way that's it's very sweet to watch, and writing them was incredibly fun. I also like them because they're like soft boys, but they're also very violent. They're street kids, and they each have their own like designated weapon. And I think it's really cool for characters to be like that for contemporary books, because that like little extra edge of like sparkle and violence is really cool for the property of Peter Pan, when I've chosen the route for doing a contemporary retelling as opposed to a strictly fantasy retelling.
I feel like your work like straddles the line so well. Like I can't quite decide what genre it's in, and I love that about it.
Thank you. It's actually not something that I would say doing on purpose. I as a part of my ADHD, which is something I struggle with severely, I'm very difficult for me to like perceive the world around me in a way that's very kind of rich, I guess. So a majority of my work is kind of stilted by that disability. I don't do a lot of world building. I don't do a lot of description because I'm not perceiving it really. I have kind of like a tunnel vision. And I'm hyper focused on dialogue and people's like expression in their inner worlds, I guess. And when you don't have a good grasp on that, the ability to create rich fantasy worlds will eternally escape you in the way that it escapes me. But having that kind of like that glimmer, that feeling of being in a new world, a rich world, a world that's more vivid than what would traditionally be contemporary, is something that's always pleased me, I guess.
I really like you know, I love Sophia, but Constance is Sophia's love interest in Cinderella is Dead, and I just adore her as a character. But when I was writing This Poison Heart, again, my main character, Briseis, I love her, but her moms, Mom and Mo, really are my favorite characters that I've written so far. And I think a lot of it has to do with me being a mom. You know, I have kids, and I see I put a lot of myself into the character of mom. And it's just kind of it gave me a new way of kind of looking at this story from this kind of parental point of view, and their mom's relationship with Mo, and then their relationship with Briseis is just my favorite dynamic throughout the story. So those two are my favorites.
Yeah,
I love that.
to go with another answer of adults that I've gotten to write in YA books who turned out to be just my favorite to write, the bakery owners in the Heartbreak Bakery, their names are Vin and Alec, and they are in the funny position of being probably about, you know, in their mid-30s and being queer elders in their community, and everyone looks up to them, and there's this like they're so funny and supportive and delightful, and at the same time there's a lot of pressure on them, and I just feel like I know so many people who are in that position in real life right now, where they're just navigating being just generationally a part of this community. And it was so fun to get to write that and layer that into a book that was also about magic and baking and romance. And so because it's so much about love stories and it's so much about how love unfolds, I really got to put some focus on their relationship that I felt like I might not have gotten to do in another sort of YA novel that wasn't just like sort of an exploded diagram of like tons of queer types of queer relationships. So that was very, very fun to get to dive in a little bit. I love them.
I love them too, and what I love about them is that they're not like perfect. You know, they have their own issues going on and they're full people, and Sid doesn't quite realize that at the beginning, I think, and then comes to realize that over the course of the book. And I feel like that's such a coming of age like arc, and I love it. In a found family, I think it's so great. I feel like all your answers are very heartwarming and very like found family and friendships. And my answer for this is very like bloodthirsty, which is in Briar Girls, which actually is my favorite book that I have written. I know maybe you're not supposed to say that, but I don't care. It is my favorite book. And there's a subplot where Lena has to go visit this house of dragons to get something, which I can't talk about. But these dragons, it's sort of my little homage to dealing with dragons a little bit. Such like a formative fantasy book for me as a child. And they are scary. Like the dragons in my other series are kind of like noble-ish, but you know, they're sort of like grand characters, and the dragons in Briar Girls are scary and dangerous, and they do not care about humans. They only care about humans as long as the humans amuse them, and the second that that stops, like the party's over and it gets very dangerous. And that scene with the dragons was one of my favorites to write, and that's the one that I read from anytime someone insists that I do a reading, because it just delights me so much. So speaking of things that delight you about writing, sometimes writing is not as delightful. I would love to hear what keeps you writing on difficult writing days.
Fear of being sued. If I don't hit my deadline, stuff happens. Legal things. And I always wait until like the very last minute to write any of my books. I wrote Darling in like a month because I just like procrastinated until it was too late. So it very much is like the pressure of my own negligence that forces me to write. So I don't want to be the one out there saying that. That is a reason that people do this.
That's a very legitimate reason.
Because I'm also like, when people ask how you write so fast, I'm like, fear. And part of it is what you said, and part of it is like fear that if I don't write the book right now, I'll never write the book. Just because I have to get at least a draft of it out before I think of it too much. But yeah, also more ADHD talk, because I was thinking about this a lot while writing Lake Lore, because I was writing about a character with ADHD and thinking, and it was all very like, okay, I'm thinking about how I work with my own ADHD while I'm writing a character with ADHD. And in a way, it kind of let me go all over the place. Like if I wanted to go read a chapter of another book that had absolutely nothing to do with my own book, I did it. If I wanted to climb on top of the refrigerator because that's what I wanted to do, I did it. It's a very weird way to work, but in some ways, just if I had to not like be right in front of the page, because that was going to make me just freeze. I just stepped away from it. I think that's also it's partially an ADHD thing, also partially a chronic pain thing, is that like I can't sit or stand for too long. I have to move around, so sort of not fighting the ways in which my brain and my body work differently were something that was helpful, I think.
Yeah, for me, I found that I'm having a harder and harder time, longer periods of screen time, which is not like really adding up how much time I need to spend writing. And it's just one of those very weird sort of practical push and pull things. And I have just let myself, when I need to spend more and more time, longhanding in notebooks. And at first I felt like I won't be able to get enough done. I won't be able to. And then when I actually let myself sit down and just have a big enough notebook that I could actually write whole scenes in it, and I could just try to turn off all of that. Like, it's not going to work. It's not going to be fast enough. It's not going to be enough sort of chatter. It helped me really reconnect with the way that I initially loved writing, which was I wrote the first things that my first really long stories in notebooks like this, and it gives me a chance to just let go of a lot of perfectionism and things like that. So I find myself more and more when I'm having a hard time, especially with fantasy, especially with fantasy, because something about the analog way of writing the words out one by one and letting myself and this technique might not work for everybody. Everyone has there's so many different ways to write a book, right? There's so many different ways to get a story down, and for me, something about just letting myself go back to that initial joy of actually writing something and scribbling it out by hand, and just like the wonder of discovering what's going to happen next. And then if a sentence is really bad, no one's ever gonna, it's not even going to be in a folder on my computer that could pop up someday and make me feel like a bad writer again. Like, I can barely read my handwriting when I go back. It's kind of like, writing it in the sand, and then the way it comes really has been helpful.
I feel very similarly to that. I feel like I often feel paralyzed about like, oh, if like I can type really fast, so that's the speed that I should be writing at. And if I can't write that fast, then why am I doing this at all? And that makes me scared to write longhand, because then it's like, oh, I'm never going to write fast enough. But then I never write at all. So so I totally relate to that. And I actually also just started drafting something new in a notebook with a fountain pen. I've never used a fountain pen before, but I bought one, and it's kind of magic. Yeah, I feel very excited about writing, and it's very cool.
Finding the right tool so much. And also when I do the fantasy stuff, I write down on one side of the page, and then I leave the other side blank for world building and pieces of the story that show up non-linearly. And so I just always can, like, it's like a little treasury of stuff that shows up while I'm writing. And that's the reason I like to do it for fantasy, because otherwise the building can overwhelm the early part. But
oh, that's so cool. I should do that.
Try it, it's fun.
Yeah, I got a free write to try and do some drafting where I didn't really have any other distractions. Like, shout out to everybody with ADD. Like, we all just have this issue. We're all just, we're just working with it. And I get really distracted sometimes when I'm on my laptop or on my desktop. So I got something where there is it's like no internet, you can only see maybe like 4 or 5 lines at a time. You can't even really go back. Like, they make it really difficult to go back and like change things. So you just have to keep pushing forward. And that's been super helpful for me. But also like speech to text. I haven't found a program that is quite right, but I feel like I'm thinking so fast so much of the time that it frustrates me to have to, because I type pretty fast, but not that fast. So I'm constantly trying new things to try and stay excited about, writing. And I think to be kind of sentimental, I'm always kind of thinking about all the stories that I want to tell, all the queer stories that I want to tell, and the readers. And I want them to have these stories, and so I'm trying to finish and get to the next one, and keep myself kind of hyped up about these ideas. So I think it's a combination of everything that everyone has said here. It's kind of finding the right tools and deadlines, and not wanting to have to give back my advance, and the readers and all of that. It's all of those things.
Yes, I love all of your answers, but I have to ask, you're one of the first people I've talked to who actually has a free write, and I see them online everywhere. And I would love to know, like, is it worth it? Do you love it? Yeah.
I love it. It really is distraction-free writing. Like it really is. It's, I think it's good for drafting, just for doing like a fast draft or a first draft, just something where you're just trying to get the words in. That's what it's most useful for, and I love it.
That's so great. I've looked at that website so many times and been like, like, but maybe I'll get one.
Yep.
They do have something that's kind of similar, but it's like on your computer. It's called Cold Turkey Writer. I saw somebody on TikTok making a TikTok about how she's sad because her computer is locked because of it. And it basically just kind of like blue screens out your computer, and it only gives you the ability to type forward. You can't do, you can either do an amount of time, or you can do like a certain amount of words or something, and you like literally can't get into it unless you do what I do sometimes, which is just, type random letters until it frees you. But it's very much like a thing kind of. So
I've never heard of that. Now I need to look it up. I feel like I would be scared that it would never give my computer back.
Yeah, it takes your writing, whatever you write into it, and it puts it in like notes, the notes app on your computer, and it just kind of like rich text file or something like that. But that literally was the only way I was able to get it out in a month.
Wow. I'm gonna look it up. I wrote it down. Uh-oh, we lost August. Oh. I assume that August will be back. And in the meantime, we will move on to the big question. What do you hope readers take away from your books?
Oh man, I just want people to feel seen. You know what I mean? I just want you to be able to pick up a book and something that I've written and be able to maybe escape a little bit, maybe have some fun in this kind of adventure, maybe see yourself. Like I just want readers to be to have a good time while they're reading and enjoying these stories. And it really feels like a really it feels like a privilege to be able to write these stories and to connect with readers.
I really like writing books where people read them all in one sitting, and when they're finished, they just kind of go, like just that moment, whether it's like a sigh of relief that it's over or a sigh of like, that kind of happy joy. I really like writing books that feel that way, specifically for queer kids. And I feel like that feeling of like feeling you're inside of that book, that the characters that you see are, familiar to you, that the friendship groups are diverse in a way that feels like home, and also getting to do all the extracurricular fun stuff and not really focus on anything interpersonal in that way is what I'm really looking for.
I feel like hope that people who come to my books or come to queer genre fiction in general get this feeling that you don't have to approach reality the same way everybody does. There's something about genre fiction that lets you open up doors and see things differently and experience things differently. And I think a lot of queer people and a lot of non-binary and trans people already do experience things differently. And I felt like when I was a kid, that twist of perspective made genre fiction feel like home and also feel like a place of infinite possibilities. So that's what I want readers to feel, some sense of that. Like, yes, the world might be a certain way and ask a lot from you in terms of adhering to that reality, but you don't always have to live in that particular consensus reality. Like you can be somewhere else, you can see the world differently, and you can take things from that back to the world, and that can change things. That's sort of how I feel about genre fiction in a way that I hope readers find pieces of that.
So my hope is that my books can be a voice telling readers that we all deserve our own stories, our own fairy tales, our own happily ever afters. And a lot of us haven't thought that we did deserve those. So this is part of why I'm so grateful to get to write fairy tales and to write these sort of magic stories that center BIPOC characters with disabilities, neurodivergent characters, queer and trans characters, because that, like, we all deserve to know that, and to actually have that possibility there on shelves, because that's growing up and not seeing the representation and not that I wanted to see and that I wished that was there and that I didn't even think of. Like, I didn't even think of it in terms of representation, and I just thought of what was allowed to me, what was a possibility and what wasn't a possibility. So that's part of what I hope readers take away from my books, that like that idea of a happy ending is also the beginning of your life, as you want to define it. I hope that's something that readers can take away. And with Mirror Season specifically, I hope readers take away that because this is a book it's about pansexuality, it's about enchanted palm dulce, and it's also about healing from trauma. And I hope readers take away that it's never too late to heal. It's never too late to feel better. It's never too late to start the process of healing.
I just want to sit here and like just be happy that we have all of your books. You know, I think a lot of the reason that I write is because I was a reader first, and I think, you know, that's not always the case for writers, but for me, definitely, I just, you know, loved books and stories and reading as a kid, and then I just wanted to be more part of that, and I write the things that that entertain me. And so, like, my first wish for readers is that they are also entertained by my books. Um, what I want people to take away from Briar Girl specifically is that feeling of like reading the last page, closing the book, being like, I have been stabbed in the heart. You stabbed me in the heart. I am in so much pain, but I liked it. And now I would like to read it again. That's not the case for all of my work. I don't think it's all quite as you know, dark as this book. But just generally speaking, I want readers to feel the same way that I feel when I read like the most enchanting and engrossing books that I love. This is a totally unrelated to writing question, which is, if you had to be famous for something unrelated to writing, what would it be?
I feel like it would be fun to be in like a male-dominated sport. I feel like people would look and be like, she doesn't look like it, and I'd take off my helmet and be like, ah. I want that for me. So I think maybe hockey specifically. Yeah. I do like hockey.
There's like so many injuries in hockey, though. But I'm with it. I support you.
My Broadway obsession is going to jump out here. I would love to do something with music, or do, you know, I don't know, something musical, something, you know, something like that. It's got to be some kind of like, I would love to be famous for some kind of musical thing, some kind of Broadway thing. That would be amazing. That would be amazing. Yeah.
I still feel like I'm going to be a Broadway star one day. So I feel like we are the same. There's still time.
You can do it.
I'm actually going to admit this. Okay, not the first part. Everybody knows that I Irish dance. I've been doing it for a while. I've been competing for a while, but I haven't gotten to compete since the pandemic, because understandably, like, Irish dance competitions are not really safe to have right now. So I really want to compete as a guy. I'm bi-gender, for anyone who doesn't know. I'm sort of like half my life as a girl and half my life as a guy. And I want to start competing in Irish dance as a guy, and I would love to be a famous, like, trans boy Irish dancer.
I love that. And also, can I ask, are the styles different? Like the steps, are they different? Or is it just different gender categories?
The steps largely aren't different. The styles are different. And I've been told since I was very young that I had like, and depending on the teacher, this was said either like in an, oh, that's interesting way, or maybe you should fix that way. But I've been told I have a rather masculine style. So I'm hoping that I'm one step closer to this than I think I am. So the steps are often the same, but the styles can often be different. But every performer is an individual, so it also varies that way too.
I love that. And that can happen.
I feel like my answer is just probably fairly obvious based on the last book that I wrote, but probably baking. I was a baker before I became a writer, and I did love it. I think the problem with that, professionally speaking, is that I don't really care about presentation. Like, I'm the person who's always just like, I just want it to taste the absolute maximum of good that it possibly can. So what it looks like at the end of the day, as long as it looks okay, like it's got to like look like a cake. But I don't need it to be beautiful. To me, like, the beautiful thing that happens is when you eat it. So maybe like I don't think you can be famous for being a home style baker, but maybe.
Well, maybe if your bakes are magical.
Right. That helps.
We can team up on this. I do all the fondant rose stuff. And I can do cakes and stuff, but like pan dulce is literally the only thing I can do with yeast. So if you can do the stuff with yeast, like, we're set.
Oh, I have a yeast allergy.
Oh my god, I'm so sorry.
No, but it's okay. Like, I'm starting to be able to have a little bit again now. But I was never a bread baker, which made it like it was okay. But I didn't realize that until a couple of years after I stopped baking professionally, which is probably because I did have to bake yeast and things for a long time.
Well, I am here to decorate your wonderful tasting cakes.
Thank you. That sounds great.
I feel like we need the real life bakery now. Let's see. Okay, yes, I would definitely be a Broadway star. But I also feel like, I watch the Bachelor franchise, and it's not a good habit, but I do it anyway. And they often have those challenges where they take the lead and one of the contestants, and they have like, we're gonna break this world record today, and it's usually some kind of kiss. I don't know if I want to be known for like the Guinness World Record of a kiss, but I just feel like something weird from the Guinness Book of World Records, like, that would be fun. I don't know what. I don't really care what, but something. Okay. I loved that question. I just kind of threw it on there for fun, and I loved hearing about what's up in your heads that's not writing related. But back to books. Is there anything you've read recently that you would recommend or are looking forward to reading for people in the audience who have loved your books? I have an answer for this.
Is it okay if I recommend fan fiction? Can I do that?
Yes.
Okay, so I recently read a Castlevania, or not recently, maybe like 6 months ago, read a Castlevania fan fiction called Baba, and it's a really interesting, almost academically written story about their encounter with the Baba Yaga. And like, as a part of my, I guess, degree, I did a bunch of studies on like mythology, like global mythology. And I would say it's probably the closest to a majority of like traditional myths about Baba Yaga that I've ever seen. One of the most interesting designs for a story, and I don't necessarily think that you need to know things about Castlevania. There's not like Castlevania lore that you have to be particularly educated about, but it's easily one of the most interesting fairy tale portrayals that I've ever seen of that character. And then they have like another like story afterwards. And by the way, this is like a 90,000 word fan fiction. This is a book length fan fiction, I promise. But the writer did do a couple of sequels that are really cool that are also like similar. I think they did like a unicorn mythology version as well. It was very dark and very uniquely written. And I think fan fiction is an interesting medium with which to do a decent amount of study when you're writing for like traditional kind of like mass media writing, because fan fiction is mostly self-indulgent. And it's very much designed to be like the snack food of books. So when you're trying to learn how to create that element of just like pure visceral joy that has nothing to do with marketing or literary quality or your editor's opinions, it's a very rich field with which to kind of like see what people are doing to create that feeling for their readers.
I have to confess something, which is that I have never read fan fiction ever. And now I feel like I need to read this, and could you repeat it and tell me where to find it?
Baba, and it is on Archive of Our Own, which is a really cool
Okay.
website. It's partially made by, I think, Naomi Novik.
I am
She's
familiar
writing
with
about
Archive
dragons.
of Our
She's a fantasy
Own.
author.
Very
Yeah.
fan. Very fan.
Yes. Yeah, it was, I think, 5,000 people to sign up for it back in the day. But let me just link it. I'll put it in the chat.
I'm gonna read it, and then I'm gonna come talk to you about it.
Please Twitter about my niche fan.
Yeah.
I just recently read Skin of the Sea by Natasha Bowen, and it's fantastic, and it's Black mermaids, and it is kind of a another look at that mythology, but they're Black mermaids, and I love that, and it's an amazing book. Also, I have this book right here, Nothing But Blackened Teeth by Cassandra Claw, and it is horrifying, and I love that. I am a huge horror fan. I love scary, creepy stuff, and this book is just fantastic. So yeah, read that.
Oh, I can't wait to read both of those.
I have two pretty recent queer and trans sci-fi novels that I just feel like kind of own my heart right now. One is Victory is Greater Than Death by Charlie Jane Anders, which is a YA, which I think some people may have heard of. The other is published for adult, but it's so fun and it's so inventive. It's called The Light from Uncommon Stars by Rika Aoki, and it's one of the main characters has like made a deal with the devil that she has to bring the souls of these has to bring the souls of 7 amazing violinists to a demon in order to get her music back. And then one of them is a starship captain who owns a donut shop, and one of them is a young violinist who's trans and who is just like stumbles into this situation, and you have no idea how exactly they're going to connect until they do, and then it's so joyful and it's so unique and perfect, and it's one of the most exciting and fun sci-fi books I've read in a while. So if you're looking for that kind of thing, definitely check.
I'm gonna try not to dissolve into a fanboy mess when I talk about So Many Beginnings, which is Bethany C. Morrow's reimagining of Little Women. Oh my gosh. Okay, confession, I didn't really like Little Women. Like, I really tried to when I read it growing up, and when I came out and realized how much of a guy I am, I thought like, okay, that explains it. I'm not really into Little Women. Apparently, I just really needed Bethany C. Morrow's Little Women. This is an absolutely spectacular book that will have my heart forever. Everyone, please read it.
I'm so glad that you recommended that, because I think aside from the fan fiction, all of these other books are on my radar, which only proves that you all have excellent taste. But that one I was aware of, but it was not very high up on my list, and now it is at the top. I am going to recommend this small press book that I just started reading, and I had to stop because it was too good, and just like recover for a little bit. And it is called The Archive of Alternate Endings by Lindsay Drager. It's an adult speculative-ish book, and the premise is uh, you're sort of following the Grimm brothers as they're going around and collecting these fairy tales. And one of the Grimm brothers, I forget which one, is gay and closeted. And at the same time, you're sort of also following different timelines because it's following the path of Halley's Comet as it visits the Earth. And so you have like different stories that are taking place at each of the different timelines. And it's about like it's like snow. It's soft and queer and quiet, and also about the ways that history is written, that stories are written, and who is included in stories and who are left out of stories, and how nothing is an objective truth. There's always a decision about, like, there's always a decision about what do you include and what do you not. I It's a small press book. I feel like it should have been a bestseller. I don't know why it's not. Everyone needs to know about it. And I've honestly only read like 30 pages of it, but it's still one of my favorite books this year so far. Yeah, it's so good. Yeah, and I think that we have time maybe for one more question, and I'm gonna ask it, which is, what is bringing you joy right now?
Michael Bublé's Christmas album, and I hate saying that out loud, but and I know it's November and we haven't even got to Thanksgiving, but that music is on in my house, and I will be putting up Christmas lights and whatever probably this week. So
I love that. Just like celebrate when you want to.
yeah.
Speaking of music, I found a cool, new to me, but old music genre that really feeds my ADHD brain. It's called the liquid bass. It sounds like what you imagine people listened to in the Matrix in the 90s, the original first one. And it has this like thing where so many different like types of electronic stuff is going on at the same time that my brain that needs so many different things to find peace, every single aspect of it is like fully engaged. So I've just been like sitting and listening to it, just like completely euphoric with my newfound ability to like do work and concentrate and like all of that stuff. So it's always fun finding a new behavioral modification, so we say.
So I recently had a relative and an author friend each give me a tie, and I've never had any ties before. These were my first ties, so I'm like really looking forward to like looking sharp as a guy and like feelings. So I'm really excited about this. It was one of those things that like I don't know. I didn't think I deserved that unless someone else gave it to me. And sometimes that happens with like physical objects, and sometimes it happens with like you're okay. Like who you are is beautiful. Like we give that to each other literally and figuratively. So I'm just really grateful for that. I'm grateful to have people in my life who are supportive of who I am.
I'm so excited for you and your ties.
That's beautiful. And I'm just gonna jump in and say that I'm really joyful about the fact that my name change is finally, like, I'm on the other side of it. It took forever. Just the process of changing your name is always a lot, and I know that lots of people have been through that in lots of different, for lots of different reasons. But doing it during this year when it's hard to go to places in person, or it's hard to do all of these pieces of it. Oh, I'm so close. I have like one more thing to change, and then it's all done, and it's all me. And that's so. If anyone's noticed that my publishing changed a little bit, that is because my actual name has changed a lot, and I'm very, very joyful about it. That has been making me happy to know that. there.
Congratulations. And
Congrats.
that's so much work that you've done, and you're almost done.
So close.
Like anything having to do with like official forms in the government is just a nightmare. And the thing that is bringing me joy right now is the TV show Only Murders in the Building, which is on Hulu. And it stars Steve Martin and Martin Short and Selena Gomez. And they are strangers in New York City who all live in the same building. And until there's this big fire alarm, they all have to evacuate. And they realize once they're into this restaurant that they all listen to the same true crime podcast. So they connect over the podcast, and then they discover, oh no, there's been an actual murder in the building, and they decide that they are going to make a podcast themselves investigating that murder. It's just like fun, and I think it's really well produced, and it's nice to see people in like leading shows who are older, who aren't like the same, 30 something and very attractive. Yeah, just thought it was like, it's quick, it's one season, it was just so much fun.
Rebecca, I appreciate you answering these questions because on panels, I often want to ask the moderator, like, and what's your answer? But sometimes I can't find like a not awkward time to ask. So I love I love that you're answering all of these. Thank you, because I wanted to know.
Oh, thank you. I mean, it's always, that's kind of awkward to be on a panel and be like, okay, who's going to talk first and who's going to talk second? And is everyone, getting to talk? Very difficult to pull that all together. So thank you for doing this with me. I had such a great time.
Thank you. It was lovely.
And I'm going to pop on and say thank you all so much. This was amazing. And if I can pop on and say some things real quick, I actually bought my first suit, so I understand the tie situation. And I've like never worn the suit in public, so it's gonna be really cool to like put on my little dapper man suit and wear it. So I'm very excited, and so I understand the tie. And my mom actually took me shopping and bought the suit for me, which brought it to a whole nother like level. So it's anyway. So I'm like, yay, ties and suits for us all who want them. So that has brought me a lot of joy. And I also love Only Murders in the Building, and I'm excited about season 2, which they have announced is coming. So anyway, thank y'all very, very much. I appreciate all of you so much. And I'm just sitting here and I'm typing in all caps in the chat, like, oh my God. So I've been trying not to just like lose everything while I'm here. So I'm just so excited to have you all. Thank y'all so much. And I do want to say to people, buy books, because that's why we're here. And Briar Girls comes out on November 16th, and we have really cool custom book plates that Rebecca sent us for them.
There, this is what they look like. There you go.
Yes, they're so cool. So you can get one of those if you pre-order from us. We also have or are getting recipe cards for the Heartbreak Bakery, which is going to be really cool. So you can get that. And you can buy any of these authors' books from us, because I have all of them. I'm looking at a lot of them now on the bookshelf. So you can definitely buy them on our website. If you go to either tubbyandcoos.com and place an order, and you can just click on the books you want. That's very easy. You can also go to the event page for this book on our calendar and click on the books there as well. So multiple ways to get to these books and order them. Please order all of them, because all these books are so good, and especially Briar Girls, since that's what we're celebrating. But I really love all of your books, and all of you are amazing, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, and thank you to everyone watching as well. And we will catch y'all next time.